I want to take a look at this verse. Just bring that back in Surah Ibrahim, which is okay. Let me just bring that back for us. In Surah Ibrahim, which builds upon some of the questions that you've been asking, and I think it's very important to kind of try to face and understand and expand and unwrap some of the meaning in this ayah. So verse 7 from Surah Ibrahim, وَإِذْ تَأْذَنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَإِنْ كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. Okay. Now, here, as you can see, you're being reminded that when your Lord proclaimed, if you are grateful, I will surely increase you. But if you deny, and the term kufr is used, لَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ فَإِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. Okay, so you can see here, and we'll come to the second verse in a moment that builds on this, but just taking a look at that, and there's a bit of, I think, with the pasting, a bit of the spelling has kind of, the hamza has moved. But it's وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَإِنْ كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. Okay. So somebody asked me that, look, how is it that Allah is saying to, if you are grateful, I will give you, but if you're not grateful, I will punish you? So why is Allah saying that? So, okay, let's just take a look at this verse. And you can use this as a kind of, you can use what we take away from here as a kind of resource to kind of lean in on whenever you're trying to understand other similar verses of the Quran. لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Allah is saying that, okay, if you are grateful, you will be increased. وَلَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ, right? That if you are ungrateful, inna adhabi lashadid, that the punishment or my punishment is severe. So I said, okay, let's take a look at this. From one perspective, one could say that, oh, this is saying, God is saying, as the person questioned me, that, look, if you are grateful, I will give you. If you are not, I'm going to punish you. And let's say the punishment is in the akhirah. This is how Allah doesn't say that in this verse. He does not say that. But that's one way somebody could be looking at this. Somebody could look at this verse, oh, there's this punishment, this fire that's going to come and so on in the afterlife. Okay. But, okay, let's zero in a bit more. You see, first of all, Allah, when he's saying kafartum, it's about ingratitude, ungratefulness, contrasted with shukr. Because in Arabic, kufar, from one perspective, can mean disbelief when contrasted with iman. But when contrasted with shukr, it means to be ungrateful. Okay. Allah is saying that if you are grateful, I will increase you. And if you are ungrateful, then the punishment is severe. Now, let's unwrap that slightly. So, punishment. What is that? You see, punishment, when the term is used, what it signifies is suffering. Because punishment it's a term with an objective for suffering. It's to be instrumentalized to attain suffering. So, okay, let's go to the corollary, which is suffering. Okay, so suffering is severe. Okay, now let's switch it back to gratitude. La azidannakum. When a person is grateful, one perspective is, okay, blessings, like people are getting things. Like, let's say a person's making more money and these things are wonderful, or they're getting more amenities and luxuries, and that's wonderful, but you can zero it in even further, and because Allah is saying, look, I will increase you. And you find that gratitude, what it births and gives rise to, is actually a state of bliss. You see, you find people who are, if we are to, in some way, certain studies, they have measured people's well-being. Okay, they call it subjective well-being or happiness. If you want to call it that, it's an elusive term used when trying to study people, but you can, to some extent, they have these things, let's say they call them affectometers, and they use different ways to measure a person's subjective well-being. So people score. Now you will find, let's say, some of the most happiest, blissful people are not those who have the most of something. They are people who have a deep gratitude for what they have. Let me expand on that slightly. There was years back, I went to a lecture by Dr. Oliver Sacks, and he was showing his research amongst other professors, and it was about happiness. And what he had examined was taken different case studies, and in this particular scenario, two people, contrasting them from New York, Manhattan. So he'd, as a project, he had spoken to and then got agreement from this multimillionaire tycoon to kind of work with him as a little project, just to kind of study his life for a week or so, and just have access. And he chose to contrast him with this New York cabbie, who was, I believe, Sudanese. Okay, just some cab driver. And he randomly chose him, by the way. And it's incredibly fascinating, his finding, because he saw that this multi-millionaire who lived in this kind of incredible penthouse suite in Manhattan somewhere, and he had all these amenities and luxuries, and you name it, he had it: flashy clothes, lavish lifestyle, had these kind of occasional crazy sex manic parties and cocaine and all this kind of stuff. But this person was extremely paranoid. And even in his apartment, in his suite, he had all these CCTV cameras, and he would often tell the professor, in this kind of short time they spent, he would tell him that, that certain people, they're trying to do him over, and there's, he's got to be wary because such and such person, he's trying to come across as a friend, but I know what he's really trying to get to, and this person, I know what he wants, and there was no bliss in this person's life. This person had, an incredible amount of wealth, luxuries, amenities, but facilities, and he could have bought whatever within reason, but he seemed to actually be on the opposite of being happy. He seemed to be quite depressed, if not clinically, but then definitely depressed, paranoid, stressed out, tense. And he contrasts this with this cabbie driver, who's also in the same vicinity. He'd come over so many years ago. He was, just taxi driver, had a few children, a wife, and he seemed so happy. And he'd always smile, and he'd tell jokes. And he would often say that, as he meets people, he picks them up with the hustle and bustle of New York, and he would really enjoy learning about the stories of people. Sometimes, making a difference for them. You could see people were sometimes sad, sometimes happy, sometimes somebody's got a new job, sometimes somebody's, on a date and they're so thrilled, sometimes. And in a way, he had a glimpse into a window into these people's lives, and he would enjoy it. And, sometimes he'd get tips, and he was just kind of financially, he was scraping by, but he was so grateful that he'd seen a life of poverty before, and he was so grateful to God. You see, bliss, its inherent kind of processor is gratitude. La in shakartum la azidannakum. What is it that naturally grows with gratitude? A state of bliss. So you can say, well, okay, what is the opposite of bliss? It's a mental state of torment. Now, adhabi, the adhab, you see, one way to look at the adhab is, well, people are seeing it as this afterlife or fire or corporeal, like bodily punishments. And that's not the worst kind of punishments. We know now in the 20th, 21st century, the studies clearly reveal mental torture is the worst kind of torture. You see, you could have, let's say you have a person who is enslaved, he's beaten, but he believes in a cause. People will happily go to the gallows. They will embrace death happily, if so long as they believe in it. You see, you could enslave a person. You could break them down, but so long as you don't break their mind, they are still as free as a bird. The moment the mind breaks down, it down spirals. It is caught in this turbulence, this turmoil. That inna adhabi lashadid. You see, the more a person drifts away from gratitude, whether they have everything in this world, perceptibly, ostensibly, they have a nice car, they've got nice clothes, they've got somewhat of a flashy lifestyle. Inna adhabi lashadid. It is inevitable, whether they attribute this to God or not. It's the mechanisms of this very existence that as we know it, that as you drift away from gratitude, you will inevitably find yourself in a state of torment. You see that, and you see, and Allah proclaiming this in the Quran for us. Surah Ibrahim, verse 7. Declaring it like a manifesto. La in shakartum, here is the key. You've got it. La in shakartum, la azidannakum. I will increase. What will you increase in? If you say, Ya Allah, shukran, or you're grateful, it doesn't have to be the goods. It doesn't have to be the toys and the bank balance. It's the state of bliss that a person is increased in. And if you refuse to do that, to be grateful, you inevitably will find yourself in these tormenting waters, whether you think you've got everything or not. You see? لَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. You see, so one way of looking at it is people could see this kind of, oh, well, this is only talking about the afterlife or so on, or physical torment. And then you've got this whole kind of this array. And you come to this understanding that will actually, and this is the beauty of the Quran, that when you look at it fresh eyes, so actually, this is actually just explained the secret to living right here. وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ. It's already been proclaimed that there is the secret. You have to kind of trust, I guess, trust the process. And I thought that that's so important, that it comes back to how we see things. See, what you are, you have a relationship with the Quran when you're reading it. You have a, see, it's a you reading it how you're seeing what's being said to you. And I thought that second verse, just to kind of follow from that thumma sabila yassara, we've covered that previously, that when a person sets upon, he takes, or he or she takes that step, the next step becomes easier. Thumma sabila yassara. Allah will, things will fall into place, the path will unfold before you, the process will become easier, but one must trust the process. So I thought I wanted to share that with you. I hope, inshallah, it gives you some clarity and some insight at those verses.